it depends on what your goals in the industry are.
Yeah.
I mean, like, hands down, especially an industry like this, that everything is so situational. Having experience is number one. Like, in many interviews when people, what would you tell younger people or whatever, like, get the job, like, and in any industry, get the job, be the intern, whatever you can, get your foot in the door, like, do that first.
This episode brought to you by Restaurant Systems Pro.
With excitement, allow me to introduce to you today's guest, owner of Rosie's Miami, Jamila West. Jamila, are you feeling unstoppable today?
I am feeling super unstoppable.
You are.
I'm so excited to speak to you.
You really are unstoppable. Like, just looking at your career, you've been the C.I.A., Johnson & Wales. You've worked in New York City, Los Angeles, Miami, Kuwait, Dubai. You got a lot going on. You've worked for Jose Andres, Peter Kelly. Like, you've been everywhere.
Yeah.
You have a really incredible career. I'm super excited to dive into it. But before we find out who you are and how you got to where you are today, let's get that motivational, inspirational ball rolling with a success quote or mantra. What do you got for us?
So recently, I was listening to an interview with Erykah Badu, and her takeaway was to capitalize on things that are easy for you. For me, especially being in this industry for so long, and it kind of feels like I've been in this industry for two different eras of the restaurant industry.
Okay.
We are ingrained to work hard. And so the idea...
We take pride in them. The harder we work, the more we sacrifice, the better we are, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's like that's the theme of what we do day in and day out, and why we're willing to, like, push ourselves.
Yeah.
And I feel like in today's world, we all want to make money that's sustainable and to give us the life that we would like to live.
Yeah.
I think that the visualization of that through media and through Instagram has really opened people's eyes to the idea that I don't just want to go to work, go to sleep, go to work, go to sleep. So even the idea of something being easy and being able to provide you with a lifestyle that you want to live is very new to a lot of folks, including myself. So it made me think about the things that I feel like are easy in my life and how I can utilize that to create a better life for myself. Not necessarily from a monetary perspective, but just from a lifestyle perspective.
Yeah.
And, like, I think that a lot of people get started in kitchens and in this industry because they love people and they love creating food. They love creating experiences. And I think sometimes if we take, like, the heart of what we do, why we do it, those things that we want from our lives and the lifestyle that we wish to create will kind of, transition into that.
Yeah.
If we just focus on what is enjoyable and not necessarily what is hard or difficult.
Right? Like, when did you know this was your path?
Yeah. At a very young age. I have both my mother and father are very kind of white collar professionals. They've always worked in kind of office settings. I would say limited creativity to some degree, but they both grew up in the Bronx and kind of sought after a lifestyle very different than the one that they grew up in. So with spending a lot of time with my mother, who has always worked in law firms, I was exposed to a different style of dining with just being around her, being invited to holiday, parties at the office, luncheons. If, it was a day off from school, I would go to work with her and just, like, I would be, around people that were eating a lot of ethnic food. I think that just attributes to growing up in New York and her working in Manhattan.
Pot,
yeah, for sure. Along with, like, casualness and elevated dining.
Okay.
I remember that, like, she shared a story with me where everyone went out for drinks and everyone got a beer. And that was her first experience having beer, only for the sole purpose that everyone else had ordered a beer.
Okay.
So I think that sometimes, like, I think that I've been put in situations where it's like, okay, I'm going to adapt to my surroundings and learn from my surroundings. I think about one of the language that was used at that first job. So that was my first job, and I was my position was an essay. It was a server assistant.
Okay.
And so even that, like, language meant a lot to me. I learned quickly that, like, okay, I'm a busser.
Yeah.
but that language meant something to me, and I just think that especially in, like, today's restaurant environment, I don't see that as often as I did when I was young in the business.
What do you mean by that? What is that?
In terms of, like, taking the job and having so much pride in the fact that you are a part of a tribe and that you are needed. I think that in recent years I've seen, you know, some folks that it's very transactional. Any interaction within, you know, the workplace being more transactional than having genuine care in what the person is doing. And maybe I look at that from a different perspective
Through a
because
different lens.
Yeah, for
owner,
sure, for sure.
Yep.
But to be honest, I also saw it. So when I moved to, I'm sure we'll backtrack a little bit. But when I moved to Miami, I had been with SBE Hospitality Group in LA, and then I moved with them here in Miami.
Okay.
And I was one of a group of like 4 bussers, and we were opening the restaurant.
You came to Miami as a busser?
Or as a runner, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yes, but
that's cool though. I love the depth that they have when they're traveling with a team like that.
Yeah, it's a long story, but I was going to school and I needed a part-time job, and I couldn't commit to being in the back of house, and I wanted to explore more of the front of house, and it seemed, you know, it was a job that was kind of, or a position that was kind of pitched to me, like we think I'd really wanted to be an expo, but the restaurant was just opening. It's like, well, chef's gonna be expo, but you know, there was opportunity to be a runner, and I just took it so seriously. I took the ingredients so seriously, the allergies so seriously, and so my peers would kind of look at me as being stuck up.
Yeah.
And they were like, we don't, like, why are you putting so much, like, why do you care? Like, literally, like, why do you care so much?
Weird.
And so that triggered that moment again where, like, they need, like, like, I couldn't.
Well, why do I care? Because I do. I think it's sometimes it's built into some people, but sorry, I cut you short. Keep going.
No, it's, you know, and then, you know, at this point I had graduated from the C.I.A. Like,
okay.
We take everything
We're in
seriously.
SBA. Yeah.
Like, we're taking Chef's Creation, and we're the first person to present it.
Yeah.
And then when I did connect with the rest of my team, and they did understand that, like, this was my career. My relationships in the restaurant changed, but that was the first moment where I felt like I wasn't surrounded by people with the same professional goals.
Yeah.
So not only being an entrepreneur now do I look at the positions that we hire, you know, through a different lens, but I also had a glimpse of it while I was, you know, a part of the workforce as well, just in different spaces.
What was your dream, going back now to when you were 16 years old, like your first job? Were you 18 when you went to the C.I.A.?
I was, right out of high school.
You only had like 2 years of working in the industry before committing to this as a career, right?
Yeah.
What was the vision for yourself? Where did you think you'd be?
I thought I wanted to be a chef.
Okay.
I wanted to be a chef. At 12, 13, I started after school, would watch Rachel Ray.
Okay.
30-minute meals. And like creating a shopping list, Mom, please. What the fuck ingredient is this?
You don't have to go anymore. I got your back.
And my parents would host a great deal of like parties and things. So I would cook for these things along with just like family dinner.
Yeah.
But I also recall at a very early age creating like mock restaurants. I was an only child for a very long time as well. So I would like set the table and like, you know, I don't know, do random things. I have a vivid memory of me literally being in like preschool, and there were like orange leaves, and I like pretended that I was making macaroni and cheese. So yes, like at 16, I definitely knew this is what was up. Yeah. But also prior to that, there were like these weird situations that I now look back on, and I'm like, I was passionate about food and about service and about, again, just like creating an experience at a very early age. I mean, and this happens all over the country, right? The idea of segregation is still like kind of it still like happens here, not on purpose necessarily, but you have a lot of older generations, and it's like, this is where Haitians live, this is where Cubans live, this is where Venezuelans live. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that I don't want to jinx it. I think we're getting to a time where that old school thought is starting to go away.
Yeah, here.
It doesn't happen overnight, but I think it's happening, and I'm hopeful for it to happen.
I mean, and this is what happens when there's gentrification. Like, this is what happens with progress. Gentrification can be looked at in a lot of different ways.
I know. And when I make the argument that I think it kind of like it lifts up communities, it puts an end to an old way of doing things. Yeah. Which is a hard way to look at it, but like you got to break the cycle. I feel like sometimes. For sure. I feel dirty even saying that, but
you have to break the cycle. But those folks that live here, that work here, that have been here, have to have a place in that progress.
Right. So to your story, biggest lessons around your career and how you evolved as a professional in Kuwait, and we'll move on.
I learned how to professionally manage amongst a lot of different people within my team at the restaurant alone. So I worked for Katsuya.
So how do you do that?
Yeah.
How do you manage amongst a lot of different people?
Patience with understanding, like having pre-shift, for example, and touching and using language that can relate to at least 5 different personalities. Sometimes it keeps it kind of generic in that sense, but using like examples and creating like a relatable atmosphere kind of like speaks to everyone.
Knowing what you know now, the woman you are now, the professional you are now, looking back at the 2015 version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself? What would you tell yourself to do better?
I would have definitely took more time in the interview to find out what they expected of me. Now, whenever I interview someone, I ask them that question. I've set the expectations that we have for you. What is it that you want to get out of this experience, and what from a managerial perspective, what do you expect out of me? Nick taught me how to interview really well.
What does a well-run interview look like?
It looks like giving them the opportunity to speak about themselves. So I usually start my interviews with like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I think he taught me this. Just tell me a little bit about yourself. I want to see if your response is like very personalized or professional. Like I get a lot of folks that will just like literally read off their resume, and I'm like, what? Like in my mind, I'm like,
the
okay.
answer that you're supposed to give versus the real answer.
Yeah.
And what are you looking for exactly?
I'm looking for goals. I'm looking for your passions. I'm looking for what brings you here, why you want to work here opposed to somewhere else.
So let's
as
talk
well
about,
as
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say like along with like what gets you excited, like what are your hobbies, and so like who are you? Goals matter because sometimes I can help with those goals. I need to understand like how teachable you are, as well as like what your goals will determine what this opportunity means for you. That's standard operating procedures. That's probably the toughest thing to develop in a restaurant setting.
So where do people go wrong most of the time?
So there's two parts to training. One is like the written SOP, these are the procedures. The second part is the real life interaction. There are way too many things that go wrong in a restaurant at any given time, and not having the SOPs or the training reflect all of the fallback, kind of like options or things that people can rely on to happen is where you can go wrong.
Where's the industry today? And what do you think needs to transform? What needs to change about the industry?
Yeah, great question. I definitely would love to see more of an emphasis on mental health, and on like the hierarchy of typical restaurant structure. I feel really passionately about like tapping into how people are feeling at work, and if they're not only how they're feeling, but like transforming the typical structure of a restaurant and understanding how that mentally affects someone, and how to create a workspace that still gets the job done. Like I admire so many people that push that type of boundary.
How do we do that? What are you doing? How are you evolving to achieve this?
Yeah, I think that having a lot of one-on-one conversations to like build up information to create something more structured is where I'm at with it. Like I really just want to tap into I know the technical, and so right now I'm working on like I know the steps of service. How do I take the levels of responsibility and make it more unified and make it more kind of like, I don't know, like water, in a sense that like we can rely on each other instead of someone feeling like the server feeling like the weight is all on them to make everything happen. And like, what does that do to that person mentally when something goes wrong? That whole idea of like, well, it's your table,
Yeah.